We are going to talk about the scale of carbohydrates. And this line here at the top on the left-hand side will be the smallest scale. And as we move across, we'll get to a larger scale of monosaccharides or sugars. We want to talk first about some of the vocabulary that's going on here. We're going to start at the monosaccharide. Now the word mono represents one, and saccharide to a chemist's vocabulary is a C6H12O6. This is fructose, and this is a monosaccharide. This structure here is pretty busy, but note this 5-atom ring in the center here. And that's fine. I didn't remember this as fructose. I had to look this up right here, but this is a monosaccharide. This is where we are going to start our magnification, and we will zoom out and zoom in accordingly to the largest and smallest ends here. So at the beginning we have a monosaccharide, and this is fructose here. If we zoom out a little bit, we have a disaccharide. A disaccharide, di meaning two, saccharide telling us that it's a sugar carbohydrate-based molecule. A disaccharide can be identified from the formula C12H12O12. It's got 2 units in there. It's not actually precisely what the formula is right there, but it's going to have twice as many carbons. Sucrose is a very common disaccharide. Sucrose, it contains 2 monosaccharides that are linked together, and one side or one half of the sucrose is fructose, the other half is glucose. So this is a structure of glucose. It doesn't matter that you memorize this is glucose, but it's a structure of a sugar, a monosaccharide. And this is fructose here, another monosaccharide. During different chemical processes in the body, they will bind together at a point right here. So I am trying to hold this disaccharide kind of on this link right here, on the left, on the right hand side. I know it's complicated, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but knowing the name disaccharide gives you an idea of the structure. 1 glucose, 1 fructose, and we have a G and an F in this very backbone structure here. 1 sucrose molecule contains 2 saccharides because it's a disaccharide. Mono, di, when it's bigger than 2, we have oligio, which is about 3 to 10 saccharides. To be clear about the name and structure and function, mono and disaccharides are energy sources. Oligosaccharides are often signaling or binding saccharides, not necessarily used for energy storage or things like that. So this is kind of our beginning of our zoom in, zoom out. They're very close in scale. We have mono, di, and then oligio is longer and longer there in a linear chain here. Now, if we zoom out on Google Earth, we get to our bigger polymers. We get to the largest biopolymer saccharides. We have branched and unbranched examples to consider here. An unbranched example is amylose, where it is just several hundred identical glucose units bonded together. So I just have a letter G here to represent glucose, not drawing out every atom. So this one right here, the glucose, and I will be honest with you, the only reason I know that this one is glucose is because I built it and Googled it, and glucose has that 6 ring in the center there, and fructose has a 5 ring center in there. So amylose is an unbranched biopolymer of several hundreds of these here. Now let's think about the scale here for a second. We went from a monosaccharide that contains 24 atoms total. Then we went to a disaccharide that contains about 48 atoms here. If these things contain, say, 500 of these repeating units down here, we are now talking about tens of thousands of atoms right here, about 100,000 atoms. So a huge jump in scale where 10, 20, 30 atoms to thousands of atoms on here. Again, another this is an unbranched biopolymer of saccharides, a polysaccharide, an unbranched polymer. We have examples of branched polymers, and one is glycogen, and glycogen contains about 1.5 million atoms. So again, boom, like another huge change in scale. Now for glycogen, I want to point out a couple things about glycogen. Glycogen is used as an energy source in humans. We store about 100 grams of it in the liver and about 500 grams into our muscles right here. This picture up top here is meant to show how glycogen is a polysaccharide of sucrose units. Remember, the disaccharide glucose is a combination of a fructose and a glucose molecule. Together they make sucrose. It's almost like a superpower. This one is fructose, this one is glucose, but with their powers combined, they become sucrose. This is a sucrose subunit. This is another sucrose subunit. And there's another sucrose subunit. So the liver lines these all up and then creates a branched, large macromolecule. This here is a very crude drawing trying to show over 1.5 million atoms here. In the center, I just have a string of the protein just meant to bound in the center of glycogen right here. All of these right here are meant to represent tens of thousands of glucose and fructose. That together is a sucrose. That together is a sucrose, and that together is a sucrose. Great pictures of this we talked about in class that are on Wikipedia, but this is almost like 1 million octopi stretching out, branched octopi. This is a great energy storage for sucrose. So meaning that if your body requires sucrose to raise your blood level, raise your blood glucose level, it can snap off of here at a time, off of the tips of these, and use that sugars available for energy. So this is the large end of the spectrum. Before we go small, we had our monosaccharide was where we started with the fructose, 1, 2, and then 10 we call ligiose. And now we have a biopolymer that is branched, glycogen, and we have a biopolymer that is unbranched, amylose. Let's go to the other end of the scale. Now, if we go smaller than a monosaccharide, we are going to less than 6 carbon atoms. So we use little prefixes here like pent, tent, and tri to represent molecules that have a high oxygen-hydrogen ratio with respect to carbon that fall under a carbohydrate and sugar category right here. This is probably one of the simpler trioses out there, glyceraldehyde, and it has an aldehyde functional group over here. Note with this structure that it contains carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and every carbon has an oxygen bound to it. Every carbon having an oxygen bound to it is a structure that we see in a lot of sugars, where it has, this is fructose, I hope this helps. Thank you.